Hey guys, welcome back to When Men Speaks. Once again, we have Ramel Nasseri here, and we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about uh, kind of our friendship. Uh, in the last episode, we talked about uh, Ramil being my best man at the wedding, and also being my son's godfather. But now, from friendship to I consider him now my brother. He's been with me when I've buried both of my parents, and I've been there for when his mom passed away. So we're just going to talk about what decision led up to one him being my best man and my son's godfather. Uh, One of the things that in the best man process, we had built a friendship so much that probably in another episode we'll talk about him being my accountability partner and a sounding board that I could bounce off of when I can come to him and go, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Am I off base? And give me your perspective on it. It is always good to have a perspective on it. And we'll talk about. I'll come back to that point. But then also when my son was born, uh, we was like, who can be his godfather? I was like, I got an idea. And it's worked out that my son kind of loves his godfather. Uh, I want to see my goddaddy, and it's things like that. And then going through some of the rough times. But let's go back to talking about him being my best man at the wedding. He's been my friend and accountability friend, uh, and just talk me through this whole process in relationships and being a sounding board. And when we talked about the perspectives, um, can you give the audience a background of like where you're from, your heritage?
Yeah, so I was born in Iran in 1976, but I am not Persian. I am ethnically I'm Assyrian, which it's my little joke because everybody says, what is Assyrian? And they're like, oh, you mean Syrian? I'm like, no, it's Assyrian, like Babylonian, uh, really old culture. And anyway, I my parents and we moved from Iran to Germany. We lived in Germany for about 8 to 9 years, and then when I was about 17 years old, I moved to the United States, directly to Texas. Lived in Plano, went to school there, um, went to university at University of Texas, finished up at University of North Texas, and then did my grad work at SMU in dispute resolution, which um, was Chris was actually a very important part of my life at that point because I was trying to do work, life, and school balance. Working full time, going to school full time, and then trying to keep your um, personal life also going becomes um,
Difficult,
difficult, extremely
difficult.
difficult. And I think that's really when our friendship even deepened further because I relied the same thing on Chris as a sounding board. Like, am I making the right decisions? I have some stuff going on, in school. There's some stuff going on at work. There's some stuff going on
At
at home,
church.
at church. All these issues that come up, we had built a trust, um,
Yes,
and that's really important.
yes.
If you find somebody that you can trust, and I guess we could go into the reasonings for that. One of the things that I think that really connected Chris and I, what we had in common, because like we're coming from different backgrounds,
Hmm.
different ethnicities, different schooling.
Right,
Everything is different, but what brought us together? And to me, the one thing that I guess connects me to Chris the most was our faith.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
we're both Christian.
yep.
We're both God fearing, and that was the one thing, that's the glue that
Yes.
truly bound us together, because it didn't matter that we didn't grow up together. It didn't matter that we came from vastly different backgrounds. We were brothers in Christ.
Yep.
And that brings you, in my opinion, brings you closer. It gives you a bond that usually you don't find easily in
Right.
today's world.
Yeah. And my background is I'm born in the United States, born in Memphis, Tennessee, in '76. Never left Memphis until I was 22 years old, and I moved to Dallas. Picked up and moved to Dallas, and didn't have anybody here, and didn't have any friends. Went to start going to church here. Uh, went to a large ministry here, where I got a culture shock in the midst of it. Just trying to figure out where it is, because when I grew up in a community church in Memphis, and then I left that church when I was 18, and went to a fairly large church, uh, the Church of God in Christ denomination out of Memphis, and then I moved here to a even larger church, which was a culture shock. But one of the things was that I got involved in church, um, and started working in the ministry, working with youth, and just figuring out the intricacies of things of how ministry works. And once again, that put a bond um, that brought us closer together, that we understand and what we see, and how things work and how our relationship works, and being brothers and being like, okay, this doesn't sound right. Let me pass it. I heard this, but this don't sound right. And just giving what Ramil does is gives an historical perspective
Mm-hmm.
of the Bible, understanding some of the things from the Babylonian times. And I think uh, one of the things that Ramil has inspired me to do is when we had the opportunity to go to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I went to Israel, and um, the story that Ramil tells about going to Israel for his dispute resolution class inspired me to go. If you want to tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, I got an opportunity through SMU to do a couple of workshops outside of the United States. And in fact, it was that same summer that we did our second trip. The first class I did was based in Florence, and that's where Chris came with me, and uh, we kind of turned it into our second European trip in that one. And then afterwards, interestingly enough, um, we met up at my aunt's house again. This time, my mom had gone with us. We had basically dropped her off in
Mm-hmm.
Germany. My aunts came, picked her up at the airport. Chris and I headed to Florence, did our
Mm-hmm.
Italy thing, and then we came back. Um, Stayed with my aunt for about a week. We traveled a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
looked at some of the stuff there. We went to, I remember we went to Tria. That was the big one.
We
Probably,
all first time in a Volkswagen Bug. No, the van.
yeah, the folks on, yeah, yeah, with all my cousins. And we
Yeah.
went to Heidelberg and took like little, day trips and really enjoyed ourselves. And then I got ready to go for my second course, which was in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Chris and my mom flew back to the U.S. I flew out to Israel, spent 10 days there. Um, a extremely enriching and moving experience for me, both from a academic perspective and a personal, a religious, a cultural experience. It left a very good mark. I had some issues while I was there. Um, um, and with security and everything else that's going on in Israel, and also because of my I would say national background, not ethnic background, but national background. There was some security issues there, and then when I came back, Chris and I talked about that experience
Right.
in depth, and I think that's kind of give you an idea of like maybe I should go and check that place out for myself.
Right. Right.
Religiously, I would say it was a huge experience being at the birthplace of Christianity, walking uh, the same areas and seeing the same places that Christ and the apostles
Right.
started their ministry. It is extremely moving, and it has enriched my spiritual life.
Yeah, and I think being over there, you understand a lot of the conflict that's really going on today, and experiencing life over there. I think when we went, um Syria and Israel were bombing. It wasn't as in depth as what's going on today
Mhm.
between Gaza and Palestine, but it was Syria and Israel were bombing while we were over there, and it was a uh, eye-opening experience
Mhm.
to being over in somewhere that they live under the constant threat of bombing and what have you, and the people, for the most part, go on with their day-to-day lives as it's normal. But it was hard for us to phantom. Okay, a missile can come down at any time. That we were on alert.
How do people actually deal with that constant
Right,
threat, that constant pressure? Because you still have to live your life.
right.
But having that in the background, you kind of start understanding, uh, maybe not completely getting it, but understanding some of what are the nuances
Right.
of that type of life. And it also, um, maybe not be the same thing, but it kind of mirrors, um, even the conflict that went on 2,000 years before, while Christ
Hmm.
was on earth.
Right.
Because you're talking about Roman occupation, you're talking about, religious differences, cultural differences.
Right.
So it gives you, at least for me, it gave me a different perspective and maybe a better understanding of, like, okay, when I'm reading the Gospels, when
Right.
I'm listening to the Word of God,
You can
try
put
to,
yourself there.
yeah, put yourself in what was going on
Right.
and why they said the things that they said,
Right.
and then of course out of that extrapolate, how does that relate to my life now, because I'm not under the same, you know
Right.
conflicts, on the same issues, but it still stays fresh and it still gives you things that you can relate to.
Right. And even that, and doing that and having those experiences, my wife and I, we talked about, we want our son to have the ability to talk to somebody that's had experiences. One of the other things is there about Ramil is that he speaks what, 5 languages?
4.
Okay,
Yeah.
I tell people five, but it's four. Uh, and one of the stories he tells is in Israel, because there was one outing that you could not go to. I think you could not go into the West Bank.
Uh, I didn't want to.
Okay.
So the West Bank we went to, and there was a little bit of an issue there, coming back out, because so I have an American passport, but in your passport it tells you where you're born, and I always jokingly say there's a 4-letter word in my passport. It's born in Iran, and over the last 40 years there has been, an issue between the, Islamic Republic of Iran and Israel. So there is some. So besides there being difference in religion and, just overall society, but also there's a lot of political issues which, currently that's coming,
Hmm.
that's coming to bear on what's going on right now with the Palestinian and Israeli issue. So that, I had some, I, the best way to put it is like maybe some comprehension, like I wasn't quite sure how it was gonna it was gonna go. It went well, but yeah, there was issues in certain areas that, you had to be aware of.
Right.
You know, the history of of a conflict that was going on there, and how do I fit into it, or how do I affect it? Um, so it was interesting.
Yeah, and in doing that, we wanted to make sure that our son had a cultural background and an expansive knowledge of history, because Ramil studied archaeology and anthropology. So, that understanding of if he had questions about history or things that I didn't know about the world, we could expand his knowledge. And just having that relationship with someone from another culture, uh, we kind of looked at everything and looked at and weighed all the options. And I was like, Ramil's a good choice for that, and someone that I know will love him, will make sure that he has a spiritual upbringing if something would happen to me or my wife, and things like that. Even to the point where uh, I had to go bury my father, and then I had to go bury my mother. And Ramil helped walk me through a lot of that. It was difficult times because my mom had Alzheimer's, and that's probably something that I'll open up to in another episode with another friend whose mom had Alzheimer's, and how we walked that out together. But walking that out, understanding, Ramil talked about having to balance work and school and life. Well,
Mm,
in this case, I had to balance work, taking care of a parent, personal life, and then also ministry at the same time. So I've got four
mm,
things that I'm balancing at the same time, which were um, sometimes it was difficult. Sometimes I didn't want to go uh, and have to go deal with the nursing home or things like that, or having an emergency, having to talk me off the ledge when uh, the nursing home called and says, "Okay, we have to rush your mom to the hospital,"
mm,
or the nursing home calling because she had Alzheimer's. Your mom got into a fight. Okay, what am I dealing with here? And just walking through that, and then walking through my dad. My dad and I had a relationship that was non-existent until after I was 17, when my parents got divorced. There was a non-relationship. So even in that 17 years after, it was really silence until I was about 34 years old, when my father reached out to me and was like, okay, I'm sick. It's
mm,
like, how do you balance that for somebody that's not been in your life for 17 years, and calling you and say, I'm sick, and not only calling you, telling you that he's sick.
mm,
I want you to be the administrator and get everybody back in line. And that's really when I found out the depths of my family history,
mm,
and also because I've got two brothers and a sister that I knew of but didn't have a relationship with. And it wasn't really until then uh,
Then you got started actually.
we actually got started
Yeah.
talking. And my middle brother, who's in Houston, we are the closest. Uh, we knew of each other. Um, I went to his graduation. It was a trip. They were uh, My family went to his graduation. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to go. We're going to go to see Daryl's graduation. I'm like, okay, who's Daryl? And my family and my uncles and them looked at me like, what do you mean, who's Daryl? Daryl's your brother. I'm like, my brother, huh? And then even then, in the midst of the silence, it wasn't until my dad got sick that we built a relationship.
Mm,
Now my brother and I, Daryl, we talk almost every week. And he'll actually be on the episode with us, and we'll talk more in depth about our relationship. But it is going through that, the navigating of, okay, your father just died. You've got all of these new relatives that not new, not necessarily new, but these relationships that you've got to now navigate that you
mm.
never knew, and they're all adults, in navigating that. And then I think helping Ramil through his mom's passing, uh, even though she didn't have Alzheimer's, it is a form of it, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, she had uh, a form of Parkinson's um, that lasted about 6 to 8 years um, until she passed, and that was difficult for me too. And it's I'm going to just echo the same thing. So there's what's going on with you, and then there's what's going on with your friend. And
right,
when Chris came to me with those things, I prayed about it because I
yeah,
said, what can I what can I do to help my friend?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't I don't understand, or I don't have any connection to, let's
Right.
say, the type of relationship you had with your father, because my family didn't go through a divorce, so I can't really
Right.
um, quite comprehend it. So what I basically understood after praying about it and thinking about it is, you know what? I don't have to understand
Yeah.
uh, what the intricacies of that are. I don't have to share that experience. What I have to do is I have to be there for Chris and listen.
Right.
And basically I would let him tell me, confide in me. And that's the other thing, is it goes back to trust.
Right.
Is build a trust relationship to where he actually feels comfortable
And
and
safe.
safe to start mentally and verbally dealing with these things,
Right.
like discussing them through his thought process. Um, Little did I know that I'm doing it because it is the right thing to do, but little did I know that it's a two-way street, because
Right.
the same thing happened on my side. So when I was having some issues, I mean, till this day, I'll call Chris and I'm like, you won't believe what happened here and here and here. And Chris is probably one of the best listeners, because he'll just let me get a steam full of,
Right.
just head and just start talking and talking and talking. Um, and then he'll come in every now and then and kind of say, so let me see, I understood you said this. Have you looked at it this way?
Right.
Or, you get that different perspective.
Right.
And like I said, the most important thing was, if I had to describe our relationship, is the depth of trust
Yes.
that just keeps building and building and building. Um, and you reap the benefits of it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it starts out, like I said, very 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 surface kind of a
Right.
relationship,
Right.
but then it becomes deeper and deeper, and what it truly means to call somebody your best friend. What does that mean?
What is it?
Um,
What is the price that it? What is the price of it? And
mhm,
you never know what the price. Something, it always costs something, but does it cost you to listen? Does it cost you to
mhm,
be there? Um, just being there to listen to somebody. It's a little bit of your time,
mhm,
but a little bit of your time can go a very long way.
mhm.
Uh, and a little bit of your time, it just may be what somebody needs because nobody else is giving it.
Right.
Um,
It's
and
very precious. Yeah.
yeah, and
It's an extremely precious commodity.
it was very beneficial in these times of need. And even now that we talk, even though we may not talk every day, uh, we I think we talked the other day when you called. It was like, okay, it's time for a bro dinner.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
We jokingly call them bromances. So it's Chris and I and another friend of ours, um, Trent, that, because of our professional life and
Family
both
life.
of my friends, they're married with kids, so that takes you in a different direction,
Right.
but still make enough time for each other and say, you know what, we need a time for us. And mind you, I love spending time with your entire family,
Right.
because his wife Nika and I became really good friends, very close. Same thing. I was extremely honored when they picked me to be Kai's godfather, which I know it's a. I don't take it lightly, because it is a. You become uh, responsible for
Right.
someone else's life, especially young life, and you got to make sure that you help guide that young person
Right.
in the right direction, in a positive direction, in a healthy direction. Um, you know, make it to where it's a safe environment, and that person can also grow in the love of God and love of Christ,
Right.
and into a Christian life. Those are some really really heavy things,
Yes.
but because of the relationship that I have with Chris, it's not a burden, it is a honor at that point.
Right.
And you
Right.
you look at the gravitas of the situation, you're like, okay, this means a lot to him, so it has to mean a lot to me. and you start building that. But yeah, it's I keep coming back to that word of trust,
Hmm.
and the deeper that trust becomes, because we were talking about, it doesn't take a lot out of you to listen,
Right.
but it actually is a huge price that you're paying, but the rewards are infinite,
Right.
because you will get that back for you, but at the same time you enjoy it, you love it when you see that your investment into this other person
Hmm.
is bearing fruit. It's
Right.
like his life is improving. He's able to uh, deal with what life, you know,
When life throws your way.
throws your way, and basically his victories become my victories.
Right.
So it's you're truly sharing your life.
And what's funny is we joked about it kind of off camera. Is like, okay, this is really sad that we haven't talked, but we ended up with the same colors on today, and
It happens.
we haven't talked, but that's how our friendship
Yeah.
is. It's like, okay, I was like, I'm just gonna go to the closet and I think I'm gonna wear this, and it's like, you come in, he's like, really, you got on the blue shirt? What are we thinking here? But hey, guys, thank you for joining this episode. I hope you got something out of it. I hope that you are able to find that friend that you have that you can sit down and have that conversation with, that you can have that trust conversation with, the friends that you can go out and just have um, a true time with, that you can trust, someone that's there for you. So thank you for joining this episode of When Men Speak. We look forward to talking to you again. Stay up on the YouTube channel, and we'll have more presentations and things coming your way. Thanks again, guys.